Correct. Okay.
Gufa.
It's about 15 lines down from the top.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Gufa Amar
Shmuel. That's right.
Okay.
So before I start, I just want to share a story with you. Yehuda Zolti spoke today because David Zolti was one of the people who gave Kiddush. Little Nishmas' mother-in-law, Mrs. Pantel. So he said he was speaking about how if you feel the Churban, you're going to be Zoicha. If you're misabel on the Churban, you're Zoicha to be there to celebrate when Rebbe Shalom rebuilds the Beis Hamikdash. So he said when you go to a chasana, you can't tell who the family is. Everyone's happy. Everyone's living. By Levaya, that's where you see who the family is. So I wanted to add to what he said. There's a story in Bnei Brak where these institutional halls that there was a big simcha. In the middle of the simcha gets up and says, "We got to take pictures. Everybody who's here from the chassan side, please go here to the left side of the room, and everybody who's here from the college side, go to the right side of the room, so that we can take the picture." So the whole crowd splits into two, and then he says, "You can all leave now. This is my son's bar mitzvah."
Very good.
There's all these people coming for a free meal. Okay. Zok the head of the Gemara. Gufa. Amar Shmuel, Amar Rebbe. Shmuel said in the name of Rebbe, Halachas Rabbi Yosy, Halachas Rabbi Yosy, Damar Mili le Mimsrin l'shliach. Now we should do a quick review because we had a whole sugya of Mili, and it's easy to forget. The Mishnah earlier brought a halacha that if you say Tanu, if you go to three people and you say Tanu get leishti, they could appoint someone to write the get, they can appoint somebody to sign the get, and there's some other variations of the same case. Now that's really Mili, because I gave you a mandate, and then you're giving somebody else a mandate. If I gave you, let's say, a get, and I made you to a shliach halacha, so then when you pass the get on to another shliach, you're giving them something. But if I just gave you a mandate, you could pass it on. But the Tanakam of our Mishnah says, in fact, that you can, because Mili memser and the shliach. Rabbi Yosy said, even if you told the Bezdin Haggadah, give a get to my wife, they themselves have to learn how to write a get, and they themselves have to sign it, because Mili le memser and the shliach. The shayla that Shmuel had was, even according to Rabbi Yosy, that Mili le memser and the shliach. I take that back. Shmuel said, even according to Rabbi Yosy, that Mili le memser and the shliach, Shmuel himself held that Omer Imru is a type of Mili that you could give over to shliach. So if I give somebody a mandate, give my wife a get, then they can't transfer that to somebody else. But if I've specifically instructed somebody, Reuven, please go tell Shimon to give my wife a get. So that's Omer Imru. I'm specifically instructing the person to pass on the mandate. There's a shayla. The Gemara ended up bringing a raya that Rabbi Yosy himself does not hold that there's a difference. They're both Mili, they both don't work. But Shmuel learns that Mili, even though Mili is like Memsher and L'Shliach, like Rabbi Yosy, by Omer Imru, it will work. And just to put it a little bit into perspective, what is the problem with Mili and Memsher and L'Shliach? If you have a mandate to write a get and deliver it, you can't just pass it on to somebody else. Is that because you don't have a right to transfer? This was given to you by the husband, and you can't just transfer it? Or is it pshat it's in the shlichus? Mili the shlichusin are not transferable. If it's a din that I don't have the mandate to do it, so then by Omer Imru, it's logical to say that since I'm specifically being instructed to do that, it will work. But if pshat is this loose, weak type of shlichus doesn't have anything to grab onto it, just a mandate cannot be transferred, so then it doesn't matter if I'm expressly instructed to do so by the Baal. So that was the shayla if Omer Imru works, but I'll call upon him. Shmuel holds Omer Imru works, yet Mili le Mincher Mushliach. And there was a discussion that Shmuel had when someone tells two people, write and give a get to my wife. For sure, he means that they should sign it themselves. but does he also mean that they have to write the get themselves and they have to learn how to be a cipher? Or does he not mind if they actually get a cipher to write it? And as a matter of fact, since he only told them to sign the get, he's implying that he wants them to find a cipher to write it. And the shaila was, what is actually a man thinking when he does that? If he tells them to write and give a get to his wife, does he mean to appoint them as an Omer Imru to appoint a shliach to write the get? Or does he mean to tell them to write the get themselves? That was the shaila that Shmuel had. And Shmuel said it's such a big shaila that if someone did that and they gave the wife a get and the wife got married because of that get, we force the wife or the husband of that wife to give her a get. Okay, gewaltig. Okay, Eddie is joining us now. Let me see who else is in the waiting room. Eddie Klein is here, and there's another admit. Okay, gewaltig. I just want to apologize why I locked you up into a waiting room instead of just letting you join like regular. Is last week we had an intrusion, and it was a very not comfortable situation. So, at least for Motzei Shabbos, before I let anybody into the room, I'm checking to make sure that they're legitimate. So I'm sorry to have delayed your entrance into the room a little bit. Okay. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Gufa. Now that we had this discussion about Omer Imru, the Gemara is going to sum it all up. Gufa. Amar Shmuel, Amar Rebbe, Halacha Rabbi Yossi. Shmuel passes like Rabbi Yossi, the Amar Mili leMemsher Neshliach. Now, we also know, that's not discussed here, that Shmuel himself holds that Omer Imru is Memsher Neshliach, even though Rabbi Yossi himself holds Omer Imru is not Memsher Neshliach. Amar Lefan of Rabbi Shimon Berebi. Rabbi Shimon asked his father, Me'achash Reb Meir, V'chanina ish Einar, both people listed in our Mishnah. Hoilkin al Rabbi Yossi, they're arguing Rabbi Yossi, and they hold Mili is Memsher Neshliach. Ma ra Rebbe Loimer Lach Rabbi Yossi. Why would you pack like Rabbi Yossi when he's opposed by Reb Meir? He's opposed by Chanina Ish Einai, who actually brought this message from Rabbi Kiva. Zok to Gemara, Omar Loi, Rebbe told his son, Shesoik b'ni Shesoik. Don't even question me. You're only questioning me because Leiroyist es Rabbi Yossi. You never met Rabbi Yossi. Ilmali Reisu, if you would have met Rabbi Yossi, you would have heard the way he expresses himself and explains himself with such clarity, with such knowledge, with such a raya, you wouldn't even ask why I'm partnering like him. He could convince you of anything because he had such clear rayas to any position that he took. The Tanya we learned, Easy ben Yehuda hayamoina shavachan shachacham. Easy ben Yehuda was listing off the shavach of all of the different chacham. Reb Meir, he said, was a chacham v'soifer. Not only was he a massive Talmud chacham, he was also a soifer. We learned in the Gemara that Reb Meir used kankan time, and when he was by Rabbi Yehuda, they told him one way. When it was by a different Rebbe, they told him a different way. Rabbi Yehuda chacham l'chashiyirtz. Rabbi Yehuda was a chacham if he really wanted to put his mind to it. So they asked, like, that's not exactly a compliment. You know, if they write in the child's report card, if Rebbe writes, if he would apply himself, he would be okay. That's not much of a compliment. So there are those who learn chacham l'chashiyirtz means that no matter what was going on in his life, no matter what stress, confusion, difficulty, and busyness around him, no matter what was going on, if he needed to delve through a sugya, clarify a shaila, he was able to blank everything out of his mind and put his full focus into an issue. That was his godless. Reb Tarfon was gal shalagoizim. You know, there are some games that you pull these pickup sticks out, and eventually everything goes tumbling down. So that's how he was. He was like a gal of a goizim. You pull one knot out from a pile of knots, and they all go tumbling. What does that mean? Whenever you ask him a shaila, he wouldn't just bring you one raya. Everything would come. Gunshot, poiskin, tanach. would come crumbling down, and he would bring you a raya from Pasuk, and a raya from the Gemara, and a raya from the Mishnah, and a raya from everything. He had such kalorkite, every part of the Torah, he was able to bring you raya from. Rabbi Shmuel was a fanus miyutnas. All Jewish ladies, especially old Hungarian ladies, when they go to the fruit store, they say, I don't want this peach from the rack over there. Go in the back, bring me from the back. I want fresh from the back. So the beauty of Rabbi Shmuel is everything he had was fresh. All of his wares were up front. There was no back. Everything was right there. All of his Torah was ready to be taken with clarity. He didn't need to be prepared. You asked him, bang, he knew. Rabbi Akiva was an oitzer bolem, a sealed oitzer. The Mefarshim explained, what does this mean? Rabbi Akiva was very unique, because when he was learning Torah, he was running from Rebbe to Rebbe, gathering Torah. When we learn, we're very lucky now, because everything is cataloged. There's Mishnah, it's a note of Masechta, and there are Prokim, and there are Shulchan Aruch, Simonim, and Seivim. We get presented the information in a very organized fashion. That's not how Rabbi Akiva gathered his information. He was like an ani who went around with a basket, and whatever he found, he took. So he went from this Rebbe and that Rebbe. So he took information and gathered information from his Rebbeim in no specific order. He just grabbed whatever he could because he wanted to chab as much Torah as he could. And then he himself organized everything in such a geschmacka fashion. So when he gave it over to Talmidim, it was a perfectly organized. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri was the same way. Kupas HaRoichel. He was like a Roichel who brought his wares, a nice pan that had separate compartments, so everything was clear. The only difference is that's how Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri received it. He Taka presented it the same way as Rabbi Akiva, but he received it in a very organized fashion. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was Kubashal B'Samim. That's almost as well organized, but not quite as organized and available. Mishnah's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov was Kav Vinoki. He didn't say much, but what he said was perfectly refined and pure. And Rabbi Yosy, which is who we're talking about, is Mimuka Imoi. He is convincing. He had his rayas before he said anything. And Rabbi Shimon was Taichen Harbe. He ground a lot, and he almost only let out a little bit. What does that mean? Tana, we learned, Mashkach Kima. He would forget very little. Umachimochi, and the little that he did forget, Eine Mochi Elasubin, was stuff that wasn't such pure Torah, maybe not 100% true. That's what he forgot. Everything emes he remembered. And I just read today a phenomenal story with Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. He was known to be an ish emes ad l'moed, ad kedei kach. He had a letterhead from his yeshiva in Monsey, and he was once in New York, and somebody asked him to write him a haskama, and he was in New York. So he said, would it be okay if I wait till I get back to Monsey to write this for you? Because I'm writing it on a letterhead that says I'm from Monsey. So I want to write it in Monsey. That's what an ish emes he was. Or when it was known that when Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky became 90 years old, he put on Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. Was that at 90? Because when he got the job in Torah V'das, but Abshraga Fagel Mendelovich, who was more of a Chassidische, he told Rabbi Yaakov, "Es passt doch nicht, that Rashiva doing Torah V'das, soll nicht trugen Rabbeinu Tam tefillin." So he says, "Well, but in the minute is not Rabbeinu Tam tefillin." So Abshraga Fagel says, "The Chavetz Chaim alleine doch trugen Rabbeinu Tam tefillin." So Rabbi Yaakov says, you know when the Chavetz Chaim put on the Rabbeinu Tam tefillin? When he was 90 years old. When I'm 90, I'll put it on too. At Kakava, when Rabbi Yaakov became 90, he put on the tefillin. So what was the advice? Rabbi Yaakov met, in his older years, he met Rabbi David Soloveitch. And Rabbi David said, oh, Rabbi Yaakov, I remember your Sheva Brochas. I remember I was there, and I remember the Geschmacke, Gewaldige Dvar Torah that you said over by your Sheva Brochas. And let me tell it to you. And he told over the word for word as Rabbi Yaakov presented it 67 years ago when he was a chassan. And Rabbi Yaakov says, yeah, that's exactly what I said. But the last nickel, Rabbi Yaakov said, I don't think I said that. So Rabbi Yaakov said, what are you talking about? I remember like yesterday, this is what you said. Rabbi Yaakov said, I don't have any recollection of saying that last nickel. I don't know. Rabbi Yaakov said, impossible. I remember with clarity you said this. So Rabbi Yaakov was a little bit perplexed that he wouldn't remember something that he said, even though Rabbi David knew it like it was yesterday. So when he got home, he opened up his notes. He actually had notes written of that shtickle Torah. And when he got to the last shtickle, the part that he forgot, it was there, but it was crossed out. And there was a note that he wrote to himself, after I said this word, somebody asked me a kasha and slugged it up. So his brain didn't even remember something because any moitzi alasubin. The part that wasn't perfect, his brain forgot. The Rab Shimon told his Talmidim, Bonai Mantayra Kindalach. Shonu Midais, I learned the Torah that I'm teaching you. Shemidaisai Trumois Midois and Shor Akiva. Everything I have, I've taken from the best of Rabbi Akiva. Very worth your while to work on, apply yourself to learn. Gufa. Amar Lishnai. Somebody went over to two people and he told them, Imru l'soifer, I'm making you in charge. Go to a soifer v'yichtayv and ask him to write a get for me. U'leplani v'yechtamu. So this is a classic case of Omer Imru. So what is halacha? What is halacha? Omar Afuna Omar Rav, kosher. It will be kosher, but v'loisas zois b'Yisrael. This is something that should not be done. It should not be done. Omar le'ula Rab Nachman. Ula told Rab Nachman, but Omar Rab Nachman le'ula, or maybe it was Rab Nachman who told it to Ula. Me'akar the kosher, if it's a good minui shlichus, and technically it should work. Amai loisas zois b'Yisrael. What's the problem? Why can't they do that? Amalei, he answered, because Chayshina and Shema Tisker Edim. What stops any woman who wants to make up a lie that she's Megoreshes? She can hire any two Edim, and she could tell them, make believe like the husband appointed you to write a get, and then go appoint two people to sign the get, and a third person to write the get. Since we are afraid this could happen, we therefore discourage Mina Shlichus through an indirect fashion. Everything should be done in Bezdin where there is absolute verification. Would you actually be choshed that the woman is going to set up false edim and a false get? But Tanya, we learned, edim machasumin al sodom ekach, if edim sign on a receipt of a sale of a field, or val get isha, which is relevant to us, if you have two edim that are signed on a get, lo yichashu chacham mudavar zeh. We never choshed that when the get is presented and the two edim signed on it, we never choshed that the woman hired these edim to sign. So you're right. My teloyati, no edim would ever sign for any money in the world. They would not sign a get that they know they're signing false. But here, the edim that are signing have no idea that they're signing false, because two edim are coming over to them and telling them that they were sent by the Bailam to write that get. They will lie, because the Burka, just to tell other people to write the get, but we're not signing it ourselves, that we would do. And if the woman hired us and paid us off, you might find crooks that would do that. But you'll never find crooks who will sign the get knowing that they're signing false. Amar l'shnayim. She told two people, Imru l'soifer v'yichtov. Tell a soifer to write the get, v'atem chasum. So this time, we're telling you yourself have to sign. We're just asking you to have a soifer write the get. There, Rab Chisda Amar kosher. He holds kosher, but v'loy tzafah you shouldn't do. Now here, there is no concern that she's going to hire somebody because they're signing the get themselves. Nobody will sign the get falsely. So there's no reason here to be choshen. So why did Reb Chisda say v'loy tzafah? Why shouldn't you do it? So Rashi says, because Reb Chisda says, really there's nothing wrong with this. But if they do this, then they might also appoint somebody else to sign, which is the first case. So therefore, we don't like any type of assignment system at all. Stay away from it completely. That was as far as Reb Chisda. There's no problem with this. And then there's a whole bunch of sets of Rabbanim that had this same machlokes. Rab Nachman Amar kosher v'lo tzaseh, Rab Sheishes Amar kosher v'saseh, Rabba Amar kosher v'lo tzaseh, Rab Yosy Amar kosher v'saseh, v'ikad amrei. And let's turn on to Samach Zayin Amud Beis. V'ikad amri, and there are those who say v'ikad apach lahu, and there are those who switch Rabba with Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yosef with Rabba. Someone told 10 people, and this is our mission. If you tell 10 people, write a get for my wife, 2 of the 10 have to sign the get. But if you say kolchem, you all have to sign it, then all 10 have to sign. So what happens if someone said Amar la'asar kisu get, which is our Mishnah, Tanu Rabbanan, Amar la'asar kisu get, utnu le'ishti. The halacha is echad kosev aydei kula. They don't all have to write it. one has to write it on behalf of everybody else. But if you get kulchem ksubu, you all have to write it. Now, of course, it's impossible for 10 people to write one document, but he wants everyone there. So echad posed b'maimet kula. One person writes it, but they all have to be there to witness it. They all have to be part of it. What if he said, "Haylichu get leishti"? Then the halacha is echad moilech hayde kubam. Only one of these 10 people have to do it. But kulchem haylichu, if he says you all have to give a get to my wife, then echad moilech b'mamet kulam. One person will carry the get and deliver it to the wife, but they all have to come along and be with him. Now, so far we discussed where he just said a general term, all of you. What if he actually listed off their names? Ibailu, mana oisama. What if he actually counted them, listed them off one by one? Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. What if he listed them all off? Would that have the same halacha? Yes or no? Zok to Gemara, we have actually a stira. Mana oisama, Rav Huna Amar, mana einik kochem. It's not like kochem, and therefore you only need 2 people or 1 person to deliver the get, or 2 people to sign it. Rabbi Yochanan Mishmar Belazar de Ben Raima Amar Mana Harei Hu Kikolchem. Zoktumar, but it's not a machlokes. Amar Papa V'Loy Pligi. It's not a machlokes. Ha'adu Mana Kulu, Ha'adu Mana Miktsasai. In one case, he counted and listed off all 10 names. In the other case, he only listed off part of names. And there's a shaila here, how you understand what is the halacha by Mana Kulu and what is the halacha by Mana Miktsasai. So the Gemara tells us, Amrila lahagisa, Ramila lahagisa. There are those who learn that by listing off 10 names, it means you want all 10 people. And by listing off only part of names, you don't care to have 10 people. And there are those who say for care. If you list off some of the names, then you want all the people. And if you list off all the names, then you don't care. And there's different shatim in the Rishonim how to understand this. There are some who say the question is if you only need 2 or if you need all the people on the list. So there's a lot of rate on this, but I'll call upon him. Each one could work either way. Listing them all off could mean I want all the ones that I mentioned, or listing them all off could mean I only want 2. Listing part of them off could mean beferish I want all the ones that I listed to do it, or listing part of them off could mean that I only want 2. And there's different ways to look at this shayla. Zok to Gemara Vayta. Itzkin Rabbi Yehuda begita the kulchem. Kulchem is a very dangerous term when someone says it, because we get into svekis. Do all 10 people have to sign or not? And if it's required and they don't, it won't be a good get. So to avoid such a dangerous scenario, Rabbi Yehuda was masakin that whenever someone's instructing multiple people to give a get, you have to say the following: Ksuvu oy kolchain, either all of you should write the get, oy kol chad v'chad minchain, or any one of you. So basically, he has to speak out clearly that even if only one of them sign, that is good. Or chasumu oy kolchain, oy kol trei minchain, or any 2 of you. Or avilu, deliver the get, oy kolchain, oy kol chad v'chad minchain. So no matter what function you were appointing these people to do, you need to speak out explicitly that you also mean to include, even if one person is doing it from the whole group, that would be a kafir again. Amar Rava said, I don't like this, because them and the guys like the bray. What if he didn't speak out the full nusach as per the Takana of Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Kolchai, the Amar Kolchad Minchain, and he didn't finish with that suffix to speak out beferish, one person alone could do the get. And what's going to happen? Vasal of Sula, it'll end up being a apostle again. So therefore, Zok Rava, El Amar Rava, all you should say ever is Kasubu Kol Chad Minchain, Kasumu Kol Trei Minchain, or Yavilu Kol Chad Minchain. So don't even mention the Kol Chain part. When there's multiple people, you always make sure to say specifically and clearly, either one of you can do this function. So halacha l'maisa. What if someone did it? What if someone just said kulchem? What is halacha? So there's a shayla in the Rishonim, but most of the Rishonim paskin that since there's a takana that this is how it's supposed to be done, even if someone said it wrong, we say that surely he wanted to stick to the rules and the takanas that the Chachamim made. So clearly, he always means Kol Chad Min Chaim, even if in fact he doesn't say that. So Baruch Hashem, we were now zoichet to finish the 6th parak of Gittin, parak ha'omer, and B'li Neder, Hadrin Halacha ha'omer, Hadrin Halacha ha'omer, Hadrin Halacha ha'omer. The next parak is a very fascinating Agadah Dika parak. It talks about the different types of remedies and very interesting remedies, in fact, that we'll get to a little bit later. And the Gemara we're going to learn now is a fascinating Gemara, how Shlomo Melech got a hold of the Shamir worm to build the Beis HaMikdash, to build the first Beis HaMikdash. So let's start. Now we're going to learn not only Samach Zayin and Beis, we're also going to finish Samach Ches Amar Aleph today, because I'm trying to get a blot ahead before Tisha B'Av, because we're not going to have time to learn on Tisha B'Av. So Dr. Eli Mishnah, Mishach Zosei Kerdaikus. Someone was suffering from a condition called Kerdaikus, which is explained as a shade, a ruach shtus that gets into somebody when they drink grape juice, fresh grape juice. It's probably a special shade that's called diabetes. Maybe Kerdaikus is diabetes or high blood sugar in Lashon HaMishnah. And it was a shade. The Omar, and in this state of not clarity, he said, Kitsu get leishti, write a get for my wife. It's not a minu shlichus. Lo yamar klum, because clearly he's saying it when he's not of sound mind.
Isn't it the same thing as somebody is drunk?
Could be, but I guess he's not quite drunk. It's a different condition. But it impacts him not having a clear thought. What about Omer Kitsu get lishti? What if when he was of sound mind, he said, I want you to write a get for my wife, and then and then he suffered from this condition where he wasn't thinking clearly. And in a state of not functioning mind, he said, I changed my mind, because he was not of sound mind when he pulled back on shlichus. Nishtate, what if somebody lost his speech? And we know he wants to divorce his wife. We asked him, would you like us to write a get for your wife? And he shuffled his head up and down to indicate, yes, I want to give her a get. The problem is we don't know if he understood us, and we don't know if what he meant to say is yes. So we have to test him with other questions whose answers are clear, and then we'll see if yes means yes and no means no. So for instance, you ask him a question that has a clear answer. Can a man have babies? Well, I'm not sure if that's a sure question nowadays. Okay, you ask him, can a man have babies? If he answered no for no and yes for yes, so if he answered correctly 3 times, then we know that his head going up and down means yes. Then you could rely on this. What is this ailment called kerdaikus? He was bitten. He was smitten by fresh wine of the press, meaning sweet grape juice. And that causes a ruach ra to come inside it. So why use this funny terminology, kerdaikus? Just say, Misha Nascha Yain Chadav. Dr. That the Tana wants to teach us something. The Harucha Kerdaikus Shema. The name of this ruach is Kerdaikus. Why is it important for me to know that? What if they want to make a kameya and force this ruach to leave the person? They have to know what the ruach's name is to address it. Maya Suse, how does one heal himself from this state of not clarity due to drinking too much grape juice? Bisra Sumka, light meat, agumri roasted on coals, v'chamer marka, and diluted, very weak wine. Amar Abaya, Amarli, my mother told me, and Abaya didn't have a mother. This was a mother who stepped in to take care of him, and Abaya is Rosh Tevis, Asher B'cha Yerucham Yosem. Abaya was a Yosem, and he was raised by a foster mother, and she used to teach him things. So she Lashim Shabbos Yoimah. If you have fever for one day, the best remedy is Kuza Demaya, a jug of water. Bas treyomi. What if you have fever for 2 days? Sikure. You should have sikure, which Rashi says means hakozas dam bekeren, to do some bloodletting. Okay, bas flosayomi. What if you have fever for 3 days? Bisara sumka, again, weak beef, agurmi roasted on coal, the chamra marka, and very weak wine. L'shimsha tikta, if you have a long-term fever, then what you should do is lazy tarnagol to uchmasi, take a black chicken, velikre shesiber, and cut it in a cross formation, which is now going to bleed. Then veliglechi lemitsiasa dereshe, go to this person with fever and shave the middle of his head, if there's anything to shave. Velois v'eluya, and put the chicken on top of the guy's head, put the bleeding chicken on top of the guy's head. V'nadche eluya, and put it there adam misrach. So there's one pshat misrach means until it sticks to him. Others learn the misrach means until the animal, till the bird makes on him, like by kaparas. And then you're not done yet. After you do this, then what you should do is v'linchos v'leikum b'maya, get up and go into a body of water at savar until your neck. Ad the cholosh al meluya, until you feel so weak you can't go on. Then v'limod, swim out of the water. V'laslik, and go out. V'leisim, and sit down. And this will solve your fever. The Eloi, don't try this at home. The Eloi, there's a big machloikis, the Rambam and the Vilna Gaon here. The Rambam says that all these remedies are not really good. They don't work nowadays anymore. And the Gra reeks out on the Rambam. How dare you say that anything in the Gemara is not perfect? If it doesn't work, it's because you didn't do it right. Avada, everything's relevant forever and ever. Why did the Rambam make such a mistake to say it's not relevant? Because philosophia hit asa. Since the Rambam involved himself in philosophy, secular philosophy, it fooled the Rambam, and the Rambam was perverted. That's what the Vilna Gaon said. But the reason why it would be nice if Chaim Tzvi would be here is because he brings another Gra. The Gra was so protective over the cover of the Rambam. So you shouldn't think Chas v'Shalom, the Gra didn't have the utmost respect for the Rambam, but he was protesting this particular halacha that the Rambam said. Zok to Gemara, if you can't do that, lechol karsi, you should eat cress, v'linchais, v'leikum b'maya tzavari, and then go back into the water, adacholosh al meiluya, and then v'limud, and swim yourself out of there, v'listik v'leisit. What about l'shimsha? What if you have heat stroke? What is the solution for that? What's the remedy for that? Bitra sumka. Again, sumka is weak meat, light meat, agurmi on coals, v'chama marka, and weak wine. How about latalga? Latalga is a lashon of sheleg. As a matter of fact, Rabbi Yochanan the Buxman showed me today that the Lablina strikes again. We have the lashon latalga right in this week's parsha. The Targum used the word talga to describe one of the places that had snow. The Rashi touches as mokum sheleg. Okay, latalga, if someone has the chills because he got very cold, brishra shmeina, there you need fat meat, agurmi roasted on coals, the chamer chaya, and raw, pure, strong, undiluted wine. Rabbi Amam Chasida kev mitzarim le bereish galusa. When the people of the Reish Galusa would chopper him and bother him. Why did they chopper him and bother him? Because he was very machmir with them, and they didn't like that he was always telling them, you can't do this and you can't do that, because they wanted to be mekel. So have a meganula atalga. You know what they did to him? They pushed him onto the snow and they held him there. They wanted to freeze him to death. L'machar, the next day, Amrullah, they told him, what would you like us to bring you, maybe to help you out? Now he knew that whatever he would ask for, since they wanted to hurt him, they would bring the opposite. So he was one step ahead of them. However, he said, honey, these troublemakers, called on mina lahu, whatever I tell them, they're going to bring the opposite. So we know he needed fatty meat, and we know he needed undiluted wine. So what did he tell them? Amar lahu, he told them, Brisa Sumko, give me weak meat, agurmi on coals, the chamamarka, and diluted wine. So therefore, they brought for him exactly the opposite. In the meantime, Chama Yalta, who was a tough cookie, who was the wife of Reb Nachman, she heard that they made him trouble and he's freezing to death. So she wanted to help him out. She brought him to the bathhouse. And she had him sit in the mikveh and soak himself until the whole mikveh became red like blood. Could you imagine if you were in the mikveh and someone got in near you and suddenly the water became red? You would run for your life. Anyway, after this happened, the koi bisrei peshiti. He had circular negoyim, circular rashes all over his body. I guess from what they did to him. Rabbi Yosef, when Rabbi Yosef got very cold and he needed to warm himself up, what he would do is he would engage in strenuous physical activity, which would cause him to sweat. And what was the activity? He would operate a mill. Rabbi Sheishes also did strenuous activity, and Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Sheishes were both blind, so they probably couldn't do these other remedies. So he he would lift heavy beams, again, strenuous physical activity, which caused him to sweat it out. Amar, he said, and I don't even know if I should leave the recording on when I say this, because I still have a daughter that I have to marry off, but I'm just going to quote the Gemara. Work is very good. It's great. It makes its owner warm inside. It's good to work. Don't
say it to Lakewood boys.
The Reish Galusa asked Reb Sheishes, my timer loisod margabon. Why don't you ever eat with me? I want you to come to join me for dinner, for lunch. You never come. Why don't you ever come to my house? Amar lei, you know why? He told her, you know why I don't eat for you? Because I don't trust your hefsher. Malu abdi, you have very bad servants who prepare your food. They're very bad people. I'm chayshid that they would even serve such a chamer de ke'isser as Eber Minachah. Amar lei, the Reish Galusa said, Mi Emar? Is that so? Why would you make such a wild accusation against my staff? Amar lei, Rav Sheishes said, I'll show you. I'll actually show you, I'll demonstrate to you that they would have no problem serving you, Eber Minachah. Amar lei the Shammai. Rav Sheishes told the Shammais, Zil Ginoiv, go secretly into the kitchen while the workers aren't looking and steal for me. There was a dead animal that was shechted that they were preparing for dinner, for the state presidential dinner that Reb Sheishes was going to be a guest at. He told the Shammais, go steal one of the legs of the animal. Now, of course, it's not Geneva because he's telling the Reish Galusa what he's doing. He's trying to demonstrate how the workers in the kitchen are going to react. So I see, like, they brought him food. The kitchen workers brought him out this meal of the animal that they prepared. Amalu, he told them, don't just give me a little portion. I want a meat board. I want a full meat board. I want the entire animal laid out here on the meat board. Amalu, ahad mulei, had medechayusa. I want the whole animal laid out on the meat board. I think kalas kari. They brought out only 3 legs because we know one was missing. And so they put a big, massive meat board with a 3-legged animal. Amalu, he told us, are you not embarrassed? This is a state dinner, and you're serving a freak of nature animal? How balash what you're going to? Are you not embarrassed? This is what you serve to a presidential guest, a 3-legged animal? So they panicked. They said, no, we're missing a piece, we'll go get it. They ran into the kitchen. So they ran back to the kitchen. And what they did is asu aiti chadam and al. They just chopped a leg off a live animal, and they brought it from some other place, from some other animal, because it wasn't properly prepared. Okay, I see the kamei, and they put it. So now you have the meat board has a 4-legged animal. It seems like it's going to be good. So what did he do now? He told the Shammais, now pull out the piece of meat that you took and put it on the meat board as well. He put it on, and now you have a 5-legged animal. You're still serving me a freak of nature, some weird defective animal that has 5 legs. What's the matter with you? So he demonstrated to the Reish Kalusa, look at your staff. They had no problem with chopping some leg off some other animal, which was probably Ever Minachai, and serving it. So I've proven my point. That's why I can't eat by you. Zok the Gemara, Amar Lei. So the Reish Kalusa told him, okay, Ihachi la'avdu kamei demar v'leichol. Let your shamus go and supervise everything, and you'll make sure you can bring in your own catering staff. You could supervise my staff, and that's it. And then you'll be safe. You'll still use my wait staff, but at least you can supervise the food preparation. So to Gemara, so Rav says, no problem, fine, I'm fine, I'm good with that. Review Taka Kamayu. They brought a table in front of him. The Aidu Kamai, what did they serve him? What portion of meat did they serve him? Sheishes? Bisra meat. V'asiva Kamei, and what specific meat did they give Rab Sheishes to eat? Rishtana the Tancha Hamasa. This is a special cut of meat. And Rashi explains what the cut of meat was. It was etzem cotton shal kafayir. It's a small bone that's near the hip. If you swallow this piece of meat, there'll be a bone inside and you're going to choke to death. And they wanted to kill him. Why did they think they can get away with it? Rab Sheishes was blind. He won't notice what he's eating. And he will choke to death. So why was it called the Rishtana, the Chamcha Chamsa? The Mefarshim tell us is because it's the piece of meat that chokes the mother-in-law. It was a piece of meat that daughters-in-law often like to feed to their mothers-in-law. That's why the name of the meat was called the Rishtana, the Chamcha Chamsa. Anyway, Rab Sheishes was no fool. Geshashte, he felt the meat with his hand, and he knew this is that dangerous piece of meat. So he didn't want to eat it, but he didn't want to show disrespect to the Reish Kalusa that he wasn't going to eat. So he took it and he put it into his shmata, and he put it into his pocket in a shmata and hoped that nobody would notice it. They were very upset because they wanted him to eat this, to kill him. After they finished the meal and they saw Reb Sheishes was alive, they knew he probably did something with the meat. They wanted to expose him to the Reish Kalusa that he's not respecting the food of the Reish Kalusa. So the question is, they want to search everybody, but how could they just start searching everybody? They needed to create a predicate to justify doing a search of everybody's pockets. Amrile, they said, and now we'll turn on to Daf Samaches Amud Aleph. They said, Igniv lekasa de kaspa. There was a silver coin stolen. We're having a complete lockdown. Nobody can come in. Nobody can go out. And we're checking everybody's pockets. But how did they come? While they were looking through everyone's pocket, they said, hey, what do you have that shemata in your pocket? Let's see what's in there. They saw that the food, that piece of meat was wrapped up in the sudr. So they wanted to discredit him to the Reish Kalusa. They told their boss, Chazimar, look at this guy. The Lord Mechel Kaboy. He never wanted to eat. And he stopped trying to hack us at China. He's disrespectful. Do away with it. So Reb Sheishes was no fool. No. I'm not being disrespectful. You're being disrespectful. And once again, the more the Democrats tried to accuse Trump of problems, he shot back and uncovered their corruption. I'm not Michael Achli. Of course I ate. But the time the chibra, I tasted in the meat that it's diseased. This meat has rashes. It's a diseased piece of meat. Amrulay, listen to what they answered. Hafel diseased meat. Today, Grada, we didn't prepare diseased meat. And before I can ask what they're going to prepare for the Reish Kalusa diseased meat, so they explained that this kitchen not only did it prepare meat for the Reish Kalusa, it also prepared meat for the staff of the Reish Kalusa. And the staff, they did prepare meat that wasn't good. But this meat of Ada is 100% top of the line. Amalahu, so our patient says, oh, no, I'm going to prove to you that this meat itself is bad. Let's check right over here, this piece of meat that I have. The Amr Abchista taught us, if there's a black scab on the white piece of meat, or chivra b'uchmasa, or a black or a white scab on the black piece of meat, Lakuzi, that's a sign that this meat is diseased. Boduk, they checked Ashkachu. So once again, he slammed them, he discredited them as being the villains. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So I want to go back to the story we had where he wrapped the meat in his shmata and he put it in his pocket because he didn't want to eat it. So I was thinking of a very geschmacka story, but it just slipped my mind, the story that I wanted to share about somebody who's trying to avoid eating, so he put it away. Let me just think if I could remember the story. It was a very geschmacka story. I'm forgetting it now. So if it comes back to me later, I'll share it later. Okay. So Zog the Gemara. Oh, that was the story I wanted to say. This story, I heard it from Mr. Arnold. Mr. Arnold learned in Lakewood by Rav Aaron. And he told me once there were two Bachrim that went away for Shabbos because they wanted to be by the Satmar Rebbe. They wanted to see the Satmar Rebbe. It was a small oilam then. It was probably in the 50s. And the main day in yeshiva in Lakewood was Shabbos because Rabbi Aaron lived in Brooklyn and he ran around raising money all week. He gave his main shir in yeshiva on Shabbos. And these Bachar missed it. So when they came back to yeshiva after Shabbos, Rabbi Aaron asked them, where were you for Shabbos? So they said, we were in Williamsburg by the Rebbe. But the truth is, it was a waste of time. We should never, ever have went. So Rabbi Aaron said, it's impossible that you were by the Satmar Rebbe for Shabbos and you didn't come back with something very special, a great gift. I can't believe what you're saying. I want you to tell me a play-by-play, step-by-step, precisely about any interaction you had with the Rebbe, because there must be some phenomenal gift that you received from spending time with the Satmar Rebbe. So they said, well, this is what happened. We came to Tish, and when we came in, we gave the Rebbe Shulam, and then we were standing there, and they gave out Shirayim for the wine, and then Challah, and then when they passed out the fish, they took the fish with their hands, and they were passing fish from person to person until the fish, they plopped some fish into our hands. We were so far echoed from this fish that who knows how many hands it went through, but the problem is the Rebbe was looking at us. It wasn't such a big crowd, so we didn't know what to do. So we made it look like we were eating it, and we let it fall down. So it looked like we were eating it, but we didn't really eat it. So after the tish was over, we went to the Rebbe to Gezegenzich. Of course, he saw everything, and he told us, you'll never be Chassidim. So Brian jumped up and said, look what a gewaltige bracha you got. You with Kedai the whole Shabbos by the Rebbe, you got a bracha, you'll never be a Chassidim. That was the mice that I wanted to share. Okay. Gewaltig. I heard this from Mr. Arnold. Okay, gewaltig. I remember when I was...
It most probably happened to him.
But you don't want to say that part.
Because you know that Avram Arnold is a what you call it, the Bell.
The Bell Zainikel.
A Bell Zainikel.
Yeah.
His wife is a Bell Zainikel, not him.
Oh, she's a Rakeach, that's right.
He's a Rakeach.
Yeah. So I remember when I was a Bacher in Eretz Yisrael, so one Friday night we went to the stall on the Tish, and by nowadays they could never get away with it, it would disappear. But then the Rebbe's Becher, the actual Becher that he drank Kiddush from, they actually passed it around to the Oilam to drink from the Becher. So when it got to me, like 50 people drank from it already, and they handed it to me, and like I'm all uncomfortable. So I asked this guy who gave it to me, is the Becher rein? Is the Becher clean? So he says, Samir rein, jede trinkt erfin. Gotta be clean. If everybody drinking from it, nobody would drink from a dirty Becher. So that was my inauguration into Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so now he is leaving, Sheishes is leaving the home of the Reish Galusa after he totally pulverized and discredited the wait staff of the Reish Galusa. Hika Nafik, when he was leaving, they wanted to kill him. They literally wanted to kill him. So what they did is Karule Bira, this is literally like the Viet Cong, in the Vietnam, they dug a booby trap so that he should fall in and die. Karule Bira, Vishadula Tzivsa Iluya, they put a mat on it to look like grass or to look like it's a resting mat. The Omri lay, and they told him, Leisima, come, Leinach. Why don't you come to relax, maybe lie down? And they were hoping that he would walk over the mat and then fall in and get hurt, and maybe get killed. Anyway, as they're telling him to come. Reb Chisda was behind him, and Reb Chisda went. So he sort of signaled something is not right over here. Reb Chisda made a noise behind him, so he realized something's fishy here. I guess Reb Chisda didn't want to come right out and say this is a trap because he was afraid of them. So Amr Yanuka, because of that, Reb Sheishes turned to a child and he asked the child, Kinderlach, Zugme wusste es handgelernt im Chayde. Amr they quoted the following passage. Netelach al yamincha or al smoilcha. Turn to your right or turn to your left. In other words, you better avoid the potential obstacle, the potential booby trap. Then he told his shamus, Reb Sheishes asked the shamus, the shamus, what do you see directly in front of me? See pisa the shadya. I see a mat that they placed down in your honor. Hat verstanden, we get our honor. Amrlei hadar mina, turn off to the side. So he escaped. He escaped. Levaza de nafak, after he got out, Amalei Reb Chisda asked him, mina hava yadam. How did you know to avoid this obstacle? So the question is, how did you know? Reb Chisda was the one who cleared his throat. Reb Chisda's question was, after I cleared my throat, you didn't ask me what's going on. You just continued on with your own thing. How did you know to figure that out without asking me? Amalei, very simple. How did the Nachar Limar? First, you made that noise, so that tipped off the alarm. That got my spidey senses tingling. And then the possibly Nuka Psuka. From the child, I saw that there's an obstacle there. And besides the point, these people, I know they're villains. I know I have to be careful with them. And that's the end of this story. And now we're going to talk about a beautiful story about Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech said, Asisili Shadim v'Shados v'Tanugos b'nei ha'adam Sheda v'Shedos. So what are these things that Shlomo HaMelech is talking about the luxuries that he made for himself? Dr. Gemara, Shadim v'Shados Elu Minei Zemer. These were different instruments that Shlomo HaMelech made to play when he's around. What did he mean when he said v'Tanugos b'nei ha'adam? He meant Elu Brechais, these are the brooks, Umechatzais, and the bathhouses where he could bathe in and become comfortable in. Sheda v'Shedais, what does that mean? Hacha Tergimu, Sheda v'Shitzim. Male and female Shedim. What are Shedim? They're half human, half demons, half malach. Not sure exactly what they are. I just hope I never meet one in a dark alley. But a shade for sure is a shady character. B'marava Amri Shedasa, what he asked for was chariots, or not church coaches, to carry dignitaries and women. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, there are 300 types of shedim and sichin. V'sheda atma, but the shade itself, ein yedeh mine. One of the pshatim that I saw that is a combination of the two pshatim offered in Rashi is that this one shade would reveal itself in 300 different formats. A shade is able to come as a human, transform himself to animals. A shade is like a chameleon. He could make himself into anything. But what the Rebbe was saying is, I'm familiar with the 300 different things it could be, but I don't know what the real shape is. That I don't know. Anyway, let's go back to what Shlomo HaMelech said he prepared for himself. Omar Mar, Hachar Tegimu Sheda V'Shitzim. We understand why he would need chariots, why he would need bathhouses, why he would need klezemer, but why in the world would Shlomo HaMelech need a shade and a shade of? Dr. Gemara, the Chsivit says in the Pasuk, when they built the Beis HaMikdash, Even Shlema Masanim. They had to build it out of stones that were not chiseled with kalim, with metal tools. So Shlomo asked him, how in heavens am I going to build a building out of stone without using chisels? Amar they told him, Ika Shamira. There's a worm called the Shamir worm. The Einzi Moshe Livneif, Moshe brought it for the stones, the Abnei Ephod. They had words written on them, so they would put like a little bit of honey in the shape of the letter, which would draw the worm to go over that root. And as the worm went over it, it caused the stone to crack, not crumble, but crack, and that would create a crack with the words, but it would crack without any of the stone missing. It would just be a crack. So it worked unbelievably well. That's what we're going to need. That's Amar Lahu. So Shlomo said, "Great. Where can I get one of these?" Amar Lahu, they told him, "I don't know, but maybe I saw shade of a shitzen. Take a male and female shade, kavshinu adali, lock them up and torture them together. Abshir the yadi, maybe they will know umagalu chanel." Why in heaven's name do you need two shadim, and why does one have to be male, one have to be female? So I thought different shot, but the pasuk shot is even if the male shade knows the answer, he won't say without his wife's permission. So you need them both there to torture them so that she should let him say. I see shade of a shitzim, so that's exactly what he did. Tavshinu ahadadi, he tortured them together. Amr, they said, Anan lo yadinan, we don't know. You can beat us up and torture us as much as you want, but we don't know how to find the Shamir one. But we could suggest Dilma Ashmedoi Malka de Shediyah. Maybe Ashmedoi, who is the king of all the Shadim, he might be able to help. Amalahu, they asked the Shadim, Heicha Isei, where can we find Ashmedoi? Amrilai, he told them, Isei Betura Palam. They're in, Palam means Pliny, they're in this mountain. He's in this mountain. And this is how he rolls. This is his minute. What he does is he comes to the side of the mountain, Kari Lebira. He dug himself a bore, Umalya Le Maya, and he filled it up with water, Umixi Betinyer, and he covered over the bore with a rock, a smooth rock, Vachasme Begushpanke, and he seals it to make sure that this water will not be tampered, so that when he's ready to drink it, it will be ready for him and safe. What is his daily schedule? He goes up to Shemayim v'gomer mesivta to the Rikia. For first Seder, he's in the Yeshiva Shemayla, and then for second Seder, v'nachas la'ara v'gomer mesivta da'ara, and in the afternoon he goes to Brisk. Then v'asi sayir le'lugishbanke. Then he comes home and he opens up the seal, u'megalei, and he uncovers his water. He confirms that it's safe. V'shasi, and he drinks. Umachsilei, and then he covers it over. V'chasimlei, he seals it again. V'azul, and then he goes on. So based on this information, Shlomo Melech devised the following plan to capture Ashmedai. He sent his most trusted advisor, Binayoy ben Yayod. Yoav Lei, he gave him the following tools to complete his mission. Shushilta dechakik Allah Hashem, a chain that had Hashem Hashem written on it, which would mean it would have super strength, that it will be able to contain even the great Ashmedai. Va'askas dechakik Allah Hashem, and a ring that had the name of Hashem on it. The Gavavid Amar, and some cotton to plug holes with. Viziki the camera, and jugs of wine. Azal ben Yehoyada went Kara Bira Mitasoi. So this bar full of water that Ashmedai had was on the mountainside. So it was on the slope. So he had to drain the water out of this to put the wine into it because he wanted to get Ashmedai drunk. But if he would open the seal, it would be obvious that it was tampered with. So what he did was he dug a bar lower down on the mountainside. Vishafinu Lamaya, he drilled from the top of his lower hole into the bottom of the bar that was full of water from Ashmedai, and it drained all of the water in that bar to the bar below. And then in Vistaminu, Bigavavidamar, then he plugged the hole because he now wants to fill it with wine, and if there's a hole there, it'll drain right out. So he plugged it. Then the Charabir Me'ilai, then he dug another hole above this hole from Ashmedai. V'shefchinu lechamer, he filled it with wine, which then drained down into Ashmedai's bar, but didn't drain out because the hole that he dug, the drain hole that he dug, was plugged. Vitaminu, and then he covered over his holes so that they shouldn't be noticeable. So when Ashmedai comes, all he'll see is his bar as if it was not tampered. And then after he set this trap in place, he climbed up a tree in a discreet location so he can see how his plan would be fulfilled. He also, when Ashmedai came, he undid his seal, Gali uncovered it, but he found wine there. So right away he should have known it was tampered with. Why did he drink it? The teretz is he was a chassidish yid and he believed there was a moifus. Chabazoy git hand gelernt hand and chayder as the Irish had gemacht as the verhoben waren to drinken. I learned so good today. Hashem said, you know what? I'm going to give you wine. That's what he thought happened. Amar, he said, but you know what? I don't drink wine. I'm abstinent. I do not drink wine. You know why I don't drink wine? Because of two psukim. Ksiv, this is like an ehrlich ament. Ksiv leitz hayayin, wine makes you into a leitz. Hoyma shefer, strong beer makes you say fat, make you say nourishing things. V'chol shoyga boy lo yacham, and anyone who suffers with wine is not going to be smart. Ksiv in another pasuk says, Znus v'yayin v'tirash yikach leiv. So therefore he said, Lo ishti, I'm not drinking. But he got very, very thirsty. Kitzachi lo sagila, he couldn't contain himself. He needed to drink. Ishti rava, he drank. He got chikar v'gana, and he fell asleep. So you might ask, Shemidai was able to fly all around the world. He could fly to Shemayim. He couldn't go find some fresh stream of water to drink from. Teretz was an edel guy. He didn't like just drinking like a fast. He didn't stop at fast food restaurants. Everything had to be properly prepared with an edelkeit. So therefore he drank. Once he fell asleep, right away Ben Yehoyada came out of his hiding place. Nachas, he came down. Also he came. Shadda Beisha Shilta, he wrapped Ashvadoy in this super chain. Sasmei, he sealed and locked the chain. And now Ashvadoy is stuck. Ki Aser, when he woke up, Ashvadoy, have a kamifrazil. He was struggling, trying to break out of the chain, thinking that he's so strong he can blow the chain apart. Amalei Ben Yehoyada told him, don't even bother, you'll never break out. Shema Damar Chalach, Shema Damar Chalach. The name of Hashem is on this chain, you're stuck. You're stuck. So one of the questions the Mefarshim ask is, okay, he was given a whole lot of tools. So okay, he needed the chain to tie him up. He needed the cotton to plug the hole. He needed the wine. What did he need a ring for? So there are those who learn that the ring was there to give him a special koyach. Shlomo wanted him to have a special shot of the Shmaya, so gave him a ring with Shem Hashem to give him a koyach to be able to pull this off. Anyway, they're now leading Ashvadoy, fighting and screaming and struggling to take him back to Shlomo's palace. Ki Nokat Levi, as he was pushing him along, Mata Dikla, they passed a beautiful palm tree. Chafbei, Ashvadoy merely rubbed into it. Shadja, it fell apart, it fell down. So he was such a powerful guy, Ashvadoy, just by leaning or rubbing against the tree, it pulverized the tree. Mata Levesa, then he rubbed against the house. Again, the house went crumbling. Now there was an almana with a little hovel in his path, and she panicked. She saw that anything he touches disintegrates. If she destroys my house, I'll be homeless. So Mata Gabi Kuva Dahir Malata, he got to this hovel of a poor almana. Nafka, she came out to beg his mercy that he should move to the side and not destroy her home. So let's turn on to Amud Beis. We'll just learn another line or two. Isnana, she begged him nicely, please don't destroy my house. And you know what? He listened. He bent over, he leaned over, so he shouldn't rub into her house. And because he twisted into that unusual position, he broke a bone. Amar, he said, this is what it says in the pasuk. The Lashon Yiraka, you speak to somebody softly, you'll get him to do things for you. Tishaber Gorim, it'll cause him to break bones. We'll stop here, Be'ez Hashem, and tomorrow hopefully we'll be able to finish on Meches Amud Beis as well as all of Samach Tes, which will place us one day ahead. Okay, Gewaltig Rabbi, have a wonderful good Tavach, a Gebench Tavach, a Mazel Tavach. The Rebbeinu should help that we should not have to fast this Tisha B'Av. We should be Zaychet to Mashiach.
Amen.
Amen. Shkoyach.
Good.